Welcome everyone to our webinar today on understanding anxiety and worry. My name is Dr. Susan Brannick. I'm a clinical psychologist and clinical director here at Aware. And I'm joined today by Michael Ledden and Darragh O'Boyle to talk about our topic, anxiety, who I'll invite to introduce themselves in just a moment. But just as we give a few minutes to people to join, just maybe to say a little bit about Aware and the webinars that we run. So for those of you that are new to our webinar series, we do these webinars on the second Wednesday of every month. You can find more information on our website, aware.ie, where you'll also find information about our education and support programs for people living with depression, anxiety, bipolar and related mood conditions. So in terms of our webinar today, really welcoming questions that you might have. So please put them in the Q&A box as we're going through. So we'll have a bit of time at the end to address them. As I always say, we can't answer maybe specific queries. So if there's anything that you're left with about your own kind of particular circumstances, maybe talk to your mental health professional or your GP. But as I say, we'll do our best to answer them as we go. All right, so I think we're kind of joined by a good few there. So what I might do is sort of kick off. So as I said, my name is Dr. Susan Brannick, Clinical Director at Aware. And today we're going to be talking about understanding anxiety and worry. So Darragh, I might just ask you to introduce yourself briefly first.
Yeah, of course. Thank you, Susan. Yeah, my name is Darragh O'Boyle. Originally from Mayo, living in WC Centre. I'm a business director in a recruitment company in town. Yeah, I'm looking forward to the talk.
Great. Thanks, Darragh. Great to have you. And Michael.
So thanks, Susan. Hi, everyone. So yeah, my name is Michael Ledden, and I'm a psychotherapist, and I founded an organization called Anxiety Ireland. And the reason for that was, well, when I was starting out as a therapist, maybe about 8 years ago, it just seemed to be I was getting so many clients were coming to me with anxiety, and while each case was different, just, sort of similar variations. So it really sparked my interest to get further training in the area and then provide a service for folks. So yeah, really looking forward to today and maybe talking about what I learned over the years.
Brilliant. Yeah, great to have you. Thanks, Michael. And certainly, I suppose, seeing from our numbers for the webinar today, there's a huge interest maybe in kind of talking through anxiety. So looking forward to the conversation today. And maybe we might just get going really with kind of starting off. I suppose we talk about anxiety quite a fair bit, don't we? It's a kind of word that's used a lot. And maybe as a kind of starting point, maybe Michael, if you want to maybe think about giving a bit of an overview, what exactly do we mean when we say anxiety? Like what does that look like?
Yeah, for sure. Well, I suppose, yeah, when someone says, "Oh, I'm anxious," it can mean a lot of different things, or I'm experiencing anxiety. And I suppose, yeah, it would sort of convey a sense of that there's maybe a heightened sense of fight or flight going on for the person. And fight or flight is there evolutionarily to support us, to keep us safe. But it can be really good to get us out of a tricky situation if there's like danger. It can also activate if there's a bit of stress going on. We've got a lot of pressure. We're juggling things at home or in work. But with anxiety, it's sort of like the same system is going off, but maybe it's due to us perhaps overestimating certain dangers or having a lot of worries, or the kind of the fears in our life of certain situations or negative beliefs we might have about ourselves, or not liking certain ways that we're feeling. We can panic. Oh, I don't like this feeling. So while we're not in any perhaps physical danger, our body believes that we are. So when someone is experiencing chronic anxiety, can feel like a heightened sense of danger. Physically, they might, maybe their body's feeling tense, their breathing's going a little bit different, their heart rate's up, they feel overall more tense, maybe mentally more worrying about the future, finding themselves thinking more negatively, or retrospectively looking at situations and going, "Oh, I shouldn't have said this, I should have said that." A lot of kind of sort of thinking about the worst going on. Emotionally, we might see some folks, if that's chronic, starting to feel a little bit more irritable, or feeling guilty about how they're feeling, or feeling insecure, or maybe even jealous, or just more afraid on a day-to-day basis, again, even though they are in a safe place. And then probably as well, you might see a little bit as well of like someone's behavior starting to change in some way, maybe seeking a little bit of extra reassurance, avoiding certain situations, people, places, and yeah, maybe an increase in behaviors that look like they're helping, but they're not maybe in the long term making the person any happier. It can just get a little worse. So anxiety can kind of maybe start small, but can sort of begin to mushroom and begin to take over someone's life in a bigger way as time goes on.
Yeah, thanks, Michael. That's a really good description, and we might kind of pick up on some of those themes as we go through. I suppose, as you say, one of the kind of key bits of things that keep anxiety going, and this will probably resonate with a lot of people listening, of the kind of things that feel like they're helping in the short term, but in the longer term, maybe keep the problem big or keep it kind of keep it anxiety provoking. So it gives relief, but that keeps the problem going. So there, I suppose, as you say, there's it's a whole system kind of experience, isn't it? So it's a threat response that maybe is getting activated at times when it probably shouldn't be. And it's kind of activating that fight or flight. And that's affecting kind of how the person might be thinking, kind of predicting the worst about the future, and maybe kind of ruminating as well. But that kind of fear, and I suppose maybe kind of seeing a threat and maybe underestimating that ability to cope with it. And then kind of the bodily symptoms or the sensations maybe, and the kind of, as you said, the kind of avoiding and the different behaviors. What other kind of body stuff do you think kind of resonates with anxiety, in terms of what might people notice if they're feeling anxious? Sometimes you may not always have the thought in your mind, but you might have a feeling in your body.
Yeah, that's it, Susan. And I think most of us these days, we spend a lot of time in our head, we're on our screens, or we're thinking things through. And we might not always have, I have to practice it myself every day, to check with my body, how am I actually feeling? Because the body's giving you all sorts of information. So some of the other things that people might notice, people might be getting a sense of maybe their hands are cold or clammy, or they're noticing their heart rate is a little bit more up, or they're more tense, or digestive issues tend to go alongside with anxiety. And that's kind of evolutionarily when we were in danger. Say when we were running away from something, the body thought, well, let's send all the blood and all the focus into our arms and limbs to fight or flight to get away. So digestion can sort of get affected. Yeah, so there's a number of things, maybe increased twitching, or just that increased kind of tension, or noticing like if someone drops something, we might be a little bit more startled. So yeah, all these things are kind of maybe some indicators that the person's going through a lot of anxiety.
Sure. Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Michael. It's a good description. And maybe, Darragh, to bring you in there a bit about, I guess, your experience of anxiety, and kind of maybe some of those themes may resonate or differently, perhaps.
Yeah, of course, yeah, definitely. Michael hit a lot of stuff there that maybe I've gone through in my past. I suppose for me, anxiety has been with me a good chunk of my life, especially when I was younger, going through maybe from 13 to 14. That's when I really kind of identified it as, when I look back, as anxiety. When I was really young in school, I was pretty badly bullied at school. So I'm gay, so I stood out a lot in school. So maybe when I remember walking through corridors, I remember this feeling of being on edge, uncomfortable in my own skin, just very super aware of what's going on around me, and always trying to look for exits. Where can I go or get out to avoid these scenarios? So that's when I suppose when I really started to see the first bits and pieces of anxiety. The bullying kind of was up and down throughout the years. And then obviously when I left school, the bullying stopped completely, but for some reason I kept on with it. So I kept kind of putting myself down, and I found my anxiety stems a lot from social anxiety. So when I went to college, or in Dublin, when I was going around the streets or in pubs or nightclubs, that's when it really started to get worse and worse and worse. I felt whenever I was around certain people, that's when I really started to feel this panic, erratic thoughts, sweaty palms, always leaving super early, avoiding. So they're the main areas mine was really social anxiety, and just kind of trying to avoid certain areas and people to calm it down. So it was very limiting for those couple of years. So pretty much from 13 up until around 24, that's when I suppose my anxiety was at its worst.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks, Darragh. And yeah, it's thanks for kind of describing that, because I suppose there's really kind of interesting things you've sort of raised there in terms of anxiety. Also, doesn't just come out of nowhere, does it? So we have a threat response, as kind of both of you were saying, and sometimes it can get, I guess, maybe stuck at times, and the environment, I think, is really key in terms of, and that's true of any kind of mental health condition. Our experiences are going to influence kind of how it is, and kind of what plays out. So what from the past kind of plays out in the here and now. And I see you might nodding there a bit, Michael. What would you say to that, or what's your experience?
Yeah, I think, well, certainly, early events, early life events, things that happen to us, experiences in school, things from our family of origin, culture, events, those are gonna kind of encode in us how we respond to certain threats. Sometimes I think about it a little bit like, even as our youngest self, as a baby, we're nearly building up our kind of worldview or our map of the world. Is it safe? Is it not safe? And all through childhood, we're building that up. And it's a little bit like then when we come to adulthood, it's like if we were computer programmers, the base code of how we see the world is, it has been written when we're small, and as kids, it's very common for us to think, it's all my fault, or, oh, I must not be any fun, or, oh, I can't sing, or, oh, I don't belong, people won't accept me. And those experiences, because kids, they often don't even have the words to explain that or explore that. Not all of us get a chance to talk to someone when we're small, when things happen. Kind of can, build that up as time goes on. And then into adulthood, when there's a trigger or a situation, it's very common then, our first thought is going to be a negative thought about that, or we're going to be threat, danger. And even though sometimes we can be nearly hard on ourselves afterwards, going, I know it's like what I'm worrying about. Oh, sure, it didn't happen. It never happens. But yet it happens, kind of, the worry happens again and again in each new situation. So yeah, I
Yeah.
think we just have to recognize that it's not our faults. To say, don't worry about it is kind of useless. Well, it happens automatically.
Yeah.
That's my initial reaction straight away. But there is stuff we can do about it.
Yeah.
You can get help for it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, it's an interesting idea, isn't it? I guess as kids, kind of, we have less of a capacity to understand where responsibility lies, for adults' behavior. So we do tend to internalize kind of, it's my fault, as you say, and maybe kind of tapping into that idea about worry. So maybe kind of certain kind of psychological models of worry might be kind of positioning that as a way to try to control, or maybe to manage uncertainty. So we do that a bit, don't we? So if, as you say, it's an automatic process, but if I think this to its every possible conclusion, then I might be able to manage the outcome. And that's not necessarily it's not a conscious process necessarily. That might be kind of some of the background beliefs that might be driving worry, which we might kind of pick up again in a moment. But I guess maybe it makes me think, and as Darragh, you were saying, kind of for you, sort of social anxiety, and I guess that's kind of, maybe that's a bit different, isn't it? I suppose from, we might feel like, let's say I might feel anxious about this webinar, that's different maybe to a social anxiety, excuse me, condition. And I wonder, Michael, is it worth saying a bit about the different types of kind of anxiety conditions, or disorders, as they might be described, as opposed to anxiety, which is, do you know what I mean? If that's a symptom, maybe. So kind of maybe delineating that for people a little.
Yeah, for sure. And maybe it is, as you said, it comes back to that relationship with uncertainty is a really big factor of it. And I suppose it's that whatever is the thing for the person, the uncertain situation that they don't maybe enjoy, it keeps coming back up again and again. Whereas something like, oh, I'm nervous about this webinar, or I'm nervous about doing my driving test, normally that kind of passes, and we get that the sort of rest and digest side of our nervous system, that kind of, you find good news, you pass the test, oh, your body relaxes immediately, you know, and goes through that process. But with a lot of anxiety, it can kind of be persistent or maintained. So I suppose, yeah, they do delineate different forms of anxiety. So one maybe being more like general anxiety, which can maybe be seen with maybe a lot of just sort of worries about the future. It may be quite a general thing, what if this happens? Oh, I won't be able to cope. Typically maybe a lot of overestimating the danger and underestimating ourselves, not seeing ourselves as capable. So it's called general, but it can kind of be about anything or a few different areas. Are we going to be okay? Are we getting sick? Are people around us safe? Are our kids safe? Are we going to get in trouble in work? Is there going to be natural disasters? So general is a really big area. But then, yeah, they would delineate out social anxiety as well, which is particularly more in those kind of social situations, which again, as human beings, we are mammals, though we are you know biologically and neurologically conditioned to want to be accepted and to want to be in the group. And for an infant as well, being cast aside or being rejected is also akin to death. So, I think there was a study done. They said, they interviewed a lot of soldiers. Would you rather have to give a speech at the UN, or would you rather be on the front line? A lot of them said, I'd actually rather take the physical danger. So what's going on with social anxiety can be a really big focus on the self, criticizing the self, monitoring the self, trying to maybe mind read others, looking for safety, to try and ensure that, we're being accepted, that we're fitting in, that we're doing okay. And there's could be a lot of worry, before, during, and after social events. So that's where avoidance tends to come in. So social anxiety is there, maybe as its own piece. Panic attacks, again, might be something slightly different, although we can have panic attacks with any kind of anxiety. And that's generally when we kind of almost interpret a bodily symptom or interpret something that's going on as imminent danger or death. And, so when, say, and this can build in someone over time. And if our thoughts are connected to our nervous system and trigger that, what you might see is, someone goes, oh, I noticed my heart's bounding a little bit fast. Oof, I feel a bit strange, which might be fight or flight. Then they go, oh my God, what if I'm having a heart attack, or what if I'm having a stroke? Which even the thinking of that is probably going to increase the symptoms. So people then can get what we call caught in a catastrophic misinterpretation of a physical symptom, which then can top up and go all the way to the top. They might also believe, oh, I'm going to faint, I'm going to pass out, may get an overwhelming urge to run, to get out of a place, especially if they're a little bit embarrassed. Oh, what if I pass out in front of all these people? It's going to be so the fight or flight goes up, and they may wish to run. But funny thing is, actually passing out with panic attacks is not very common. It's actually low blood pressure that causes passing out, not kind of a raised blood pressure. So yet to meet too many people who've said that they have actually passed out during panic attacks, but it's a very common fear that people have. I'm going to fall, I'm going to hit my head, I'm going to ruin the day. I'm at my friend's wedding, I'm going to ruin it. I need to get out of here, I need to retreat. And then a sort of a cycle perhaps of avoidance then can set in with panic attacks as well. So yeah, there's a few others, but they're maybe a bit more specific, like phobias, OCD, PTSD. But I think generally those are some of the main anxieties we'd see in the general population quite a lot.
Yeah, and me too. I think that really resonates in terms of, and I guess it sort of matters kind of what kind of anxiety condition is playing out for people, because the kind of intervention may be kind of slightly different, I suppose. So I suppose maybe in some ways that fight or flight being active, it's a problem of attention in a sense as well. So in social anxiety, the attention focuses on the self, and as you said, scanning for confirmation that something's wrong potentially, and in panic, the attention is on the body symptom, and then that drives a belief that actually this is catastrophic and I need to do something quick. And I guess some of these, I suppose, to name it, maybe a lot of these ideas are kind of coming from a cognitive behavioral therapy kind of framework. And I suppose it's one approach that can be beneficial. And maybe kind of, Darragh, kind of inviting you in here again as well about I guess even kind of what was your experience of what's been helpful about kind of managing anxiety and kind of what's been useful in that journey for you?
Yeah, of course. I definitely have tried a number of things in the past, but I remember when I think it was 23 or 24, and I kind of I kind of broke down in front of my mom, and she brought me straight to a doctor, and then my doctor pretty much recommended me to go see a psychiatrist who specialized in CBT, and that, without a doubt, just transformed my life completely. Pretty much what Michael was saying before, it's again like erratic thoughts. I was avoiding everything. I used to wear a cap over my head. I wouldn't leave the house a lot of the times. I would always looking out for areas of danger. But I was never really under threat, but they're all inside my own head. So once I started doing the CBT, he slowly started to help shift my mindset about myself and about the threats that were around me or lack of. So that was a huge. That's pretty much changed my life completely. That CBT and that phenomenal doctor. So that was one thing that really helped me. And other things that helped me as well in the past. Even to this day, I do it. I don't do it religiously, but I do it as much as I possibly can. I try to do some form of meditation. I try to do some form of exercise. I'm not a great jogger, not a great runner, but get out in the fresh air. That really helps me as well. Doing some form of fitness, going to the gym, and as well, in the past, when the anxiety was really, really bad, I did go on a form of antidepressants for maybe a year. That definitely did help. I didn't want to stay on them forever, but I just wanted to help with the counselling. So that really kind of helped me as well. So the CBT definitely was a huge impact in my life, and I can see before and after CBT.
That's great, isn't it? And as you say,
Yeah.
kind of, there's different strands to what's helpful. It sounds like talking to your mum as well was a big step in terms of saying,
Huge,
actually,
yeah.
this is what's going on. Yeah.
Exactly. So for years before that, especially what Michael was saying, I was all me. I was so focused on myself. Like I was the issue. I always felt like I was some form of an alien. I was different from everyone else. I suppose I got to such a level in my early 20s that I literally couldn't take it anymore. So I was so lucky that I had that one person that I broke down. She knew that something wasn't right, but she didn't want to pry. But I opened up. She, as I said before, got me to a great doctor, got a great counselor, and then my life turned around completely.
Yeah, it sounds like it really opened up those kind of opportunities for you to kind of come out of that kind of cycle of, as you said, kind of wearing the cap and avoiding and feeling stuck in that anxiety place. And I suppose one of the key bits that we're talking about is kind of avoidance is like one of the biggest things in anxiety, isn't it? And as you say, sort of CBT really changed your life. And I wonder how, and I'm not sure if it's possible to answer this, but kind of what kind of helped in tackling some of that avoidance, taking those small steps to kind of getting into situations or doing things a bit differently. What was that like?
When I look back now, these scenarios were so mundane, like getting out of a car, walking down the street, going into a bar, going into a shop. These were huge things for me. Because I went from, I suppose, for a long period of time in school where I was judged and spoke about negatively for a long period of time, and then that stopped. But then I suppose that inbuilt, I suppose, a belief within myself, and so I just had to break it down bit by bit. And every week he just tell me, just take your cap off and walk around the block. Just get out of the car for a second and go back in again. Just small little bits and pieces, and they're all tiny little wins. And slowly by slowly, it built my confidence, built my self-esteem by doing these small little, not huge things, but these small little items that pretty much transform my life for me. Yeah.
And I get they're not small though, are they? If you're feeling really anxious, I think they're not mundane, they're huge actually. And as your body is reacting like that, it's a very, very frightening experience, isn't it? So it's really courageous to be able to do those steps. And as you say, it's sort of doing that kind of those actions built up your confidence, but so it also built up a belief in yourself. So that's a different way of thinking and sort of broke down the other kind of maybe more entrenched view you had of yourself because sound like you were having experiences that were disconfirming that and actually showing that, the kind of maybe the worst thing didn't happen, I would guess, maybe, or.
Exactly. Everything I thought in my head that I was so terrified of never, ever, ever happened. It was the opposite. People want to be with me. People want to be my friends. People maybe want to go on a date or these things where in my own head, I was just kind of this monster. I didn't want to be around people, but I was I was getting the opposite. So it's kind of, like you said, kind of creating that belief, that foundation of more self-love, self-confidence. But it definitely was a long journey, but that was definitely the starting block of it, CBT.
Yeah, that's really great. And I guess that's one of the key bits of CBT as a therapy. It's quite active, isn't it? So we could kind of all kind of talk at length about something, or you might try to convince me of something, I might try to convince Michael, but actually it's the doing, isn't it? That kind of gives the experience that you can see it differently,
Exactly.
potentially. Yeah.
Mhm.
And I guess Michael, you're nodding again. I don't know if you wanted to add anything to that, or what Darragh's saying maybe resonates.
Yeah, absolutely. Very, very much so. Um, and like, yeah, because I think it really is, it's the little avoidance or safety seeking behaviors. We can even call them safety behaviors that, it might be Googling our health symptoms. Oh my God, I need to get all the information on this. Or it might be, oh, almost like fusing it. Oh, well, the last time I went out there now, such and such was there, or I was in that place, it was very noisy, I couldn't handle it. I'll avoid there from now on, or even double, triple checking our work if we're maybe could be working in a very high performing job and doing a lot of these things, maybe out of maybe a perfectionistic tendency as well, that we're double, triple checking things that, while that does in the short term, there's the uncertainty. Oh, what if something goes wrong? What if I made a mistake? What if I've got a health condition? The uncertainty, then we seek the answer, which may or may not bring the anxiety down into, whew, phew, I'm actually grand, or I've triple checked it now, it's okay. But actually, yeah, in the long term, it kind of actually re-cements maybe whatever our fear is as a likelihood, and kind of undermines our ability to reassure ourselves. So when Darragh said, oh, it's kind of like everyday things that were problematic, that's very, very common, that it does get to the stage where it shrinks our comfort zone more and more and more over time.
Mm.
Well, what I kind of like about someone's using a bit of a CBT approach with clients is that you say, well, let's set up some, we call them behavior experiments, to just even to play with this and find out where the level's at. So it's no throwing yourself too much in the deep end. It's not pass or fail, even if something doesn't go according to plan. Well, there's great information in that. You can bring it back and work collaboratively with someone to sort of begin to grow that comfort zone again, and start said build up that confidence, build self-esteem, and see that, yeah, you're stronger than you think.
Mm. Yeah, as you say, kind of building it up bit by bit. And it's a kind of really key point, isn't it? Those sort of safety behaviors, or the kind of checking. And it's a hard sell, isn't it? Because if you have something that kind of gets rid of the anxiety kind of relatively quickly, it's hard to let that go. But as you say, it kind of cements it in a longer term sort of way, as we're saying. So there's kind of key bits, I suppose, if you're thinking, well, how do I get myself out of anxiety? There's kind of, Darragh, as you're saying, there's tackling that avoidance, and there's maybe sharing it with someone as well, and saying, actually, this is what's really going on for me, and kind of maybe starting from that point, and letting go of some of those kind of behaviors that look like they're helping, but they're not potentially. But as you say, Michael, taking that in maybe a gentle way, so not kind of flooding yourself with something terrifying, but easing into something, and doing it in the day to day. And I guess there's kind of managing anxiety, kind of physical symptoms as well. So there's a need to kind of regulate, or kind of maybe turn the volume down on that alarm system. Um, and I don't know, maybe at this kind of midpoint in our webinar, maybe worth kind of doing something like that as well. What do you think, Michael? Maybe just to give a bit of a flavor of what that exercise, or one of many could be like. What do you think?
Yeah, Susan, I think that's a lovely idea, because yeah, maybe we have been talking about some maybe tender topics,
Hmm.
and yeah, I suppose normally I would sort of start um, sessions with people by maybe offering some physical grounding techniques, because when we're already up to here, it's very hard then to recognize, oh, I'm in my fight, or I'm in my negative thoughts, or I'm about to do this behavior. We kind of need something to give ourselves that little bit of just balancing ourselves out. So one tool that I use myself all the time, and I always offer it to clients. It's a breathing technique called the 4-7-8. And I really like it because you could be doing it in any situation. If you're about to speak at a meeting, you're about to do something that's difficult, you just notice you're in the car. Oh, my stress or anxiety is a little bit up. You can do this technique, with your eyes open, totally safely and securely. So before maybe we take a few breaths together, I'll just say what the 4, 7, and 8 are. So it's 4 seconds breathing in through the nose, holding that breath for 7 seconds, and then blowing it out for 8, but blowing it out through pursed lips. So almost like you're blowing out through a straw. So, and the reason why this really works is, when our breathing is a little bit is off, or it's tight because we're in a little bit of fight or flight, it actually affects the levels of CO2 and oxygen in our blood, which can also make us feel more clammy, maybe more racy mind, more just feeling a little bit dizzy or off. That's normally what the dizziness is, even with panic attacks. Whereas this actually just restores those levels to a relaxed rate, and helps us to ground. I normally look for, or my shoulders start to drop a little bit when I do it. Sometimes it even makes me yawn when I do a few breaths. But anyway, let's get into it. So all together, yeah. In for 4, hold for 7, out for 8 through lips. In for 4, hold for 7, and out for 8. We'll do 2 more. In for 4, hold for 7, out for 8. Last one. In for 4, hold for 7, and out for 8. I'm just tuning into your body there to see, has any tension dropped away? Has anything loosened? Would you like to yawn or sigh? Feel your feet on the floor. So that's a very simple one that you can do anytime. Sometimes I'll even do it in a session with someone to see if they notice when they're going, I can't be doing that in public. That's got to be, people will notice, or I don't want to draw attention to myself. Well, I'll say, well, did you notice me doing it for the last, 30 seconds or whatever? So it's a really nice, handy one that you can do regularly, or just when needed, when you become aware that you're feeling anxious.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. Thank you, Michael. Thanks for guiding us through, and hopefully it's kind of been useful to people listening. It feels quite relaxing. I don't know what it was like for you there, Darragh, but certainly for me it felt a little bit relaxing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I guess it's a kind of a concrete thing that, as you say, Michael, as a grounding. So there's a level, we might call it, maybe in psychology, kind of window of tolerance as well. So there needs to be a level that you can kind of function at. So if you're completely overwhelmed with anxiety, it's not really the place to be kind of challenging thoughts or kind of what am I thinking? It's actually about calming down first. And I guess people, we kind of forget that, can't we? So it's getting to a space maybe that feels manageable, and then maybe taking in other kind of strategies and skills.
Definitely. And just to say as well, for some people, in for 4 through your nose if you've a blocked nose, or hold for 7, out for 8 if you've got lung issues. You can modify that to whatever feels comfortable, or lengthen it if you wish. But you're so right, Susan. When we're in that fight or flight place, and we're outside that window of tolerance, the logical or the sort of structural thinking is out the window, and we're into the amygdala part of the brain that deals with threat, and it's just gonna, like when our ancestors heard a rustling in the bushes, they didn't hang around to wait and see if it was the wind or saber-tooth tiger. They were
Mm.
gone. So,
Yeah.
that's helpful, but also in humans nowadays cannot be. So yeah, just to bring it back to that window of tolerance is so important.
Yeah, to manage it. And I guess maybe just another thing just to say lastly on that as well is thinking about sometimes the kind of complexity of, if I don't do the breathing, then I'm going to have the panic attack. So I suppose it's sort of using skills to ground yourself, but also kind of knowing yourself, what's the function of what I'm doing. That's a conversation I often have with people who might kind of look for support around anxiety, and you'll know yourself, like, why am I doing this? So is this an avoidance, or is this because I just don't want to do something, or am I doing this breathing because if I don't, I'm frightened something else will happen? So I guess just having that in mind, what's the purpose of what I'm doing? And does that kind of maybe kind of take me away from my goals, or does it bring me a bit closer? So kind of having that in mind too. Um, so I see there's a good few questions coming in actually. So what I might do is maybe start having a look at some of them, and maybe the three of us can kind of think through some of the answers here. So okay. So yeah, so maybe this thinking about this one here, so kind of health and social anxiety kind of spiked after the pandemic, and that might really resonate with a lot of people. Actually, we were I know it's kind of a little while since the pandemic, but certainly we were kind of at home for quite a long time, weren't we? And out of those situations, and now I know for a lot of people that I would speak to kind of have difficulties ongoing. So this person is kind of saying going on transport feels very overwhelming and avoidance takes over. What small steps can people do to start working on this? And I guess this person is kind of touching on something very central as well about the kind of how we talk to ourselves after. So if it's not possible to do something, feeling guilty or ashamed or unreliable. So Darragh, I don't know if you might be able to take that. What small steps do you think someone could start taking if they were feeling very overwhelmed with something that kind of had been okay before, but now just feels really difficult?
For me personally, it's just at start I got really overwhelmed. So maybe no harm maybe speaking to someone if they feel
Yeah.
it if it's really tough. Again, like I said, I found exercise really helpful. Just get the endorphins going, get out and get some fresh air. Meditation really helped me as well. But then the negative self-talk, try and get on top of that as much as you possibly can, because that chatter can really start bringing you down. So just try and go easy on yourself as much as you possibly can. And speaking to close friends and family, that was huge for me as well. Just kind of knowing that there's a strong support system there, that whenever maybe I brought something up, that one or two people are maybe going through similar things themselves, and it brings up a debate between your friends and family. Just kind of reaching out to one or two people, and they can help you. That worked for me in the past.
Yeah, thanks, Sarah. That's really helpful. And Michael, what would you add into that?
Yeah, I think Dara's so right. The dynamics of kind of, oh, shame, or I'm the only one, or I have to keep it as a secret, or getting so kind of hard or down on ourselves. That's often a kind of nearly like a secondary process that goes on, could be quite compounding, and even, sometimes anxiety can lead to depression. So again, I think I'd probably say, take an inventory of where you're at with it. If taking the bus or the train, 10 stops somewhere to your destination feels like too much, then, maybe rate that on a scale of 1 to 10 and see how that feels. And normally, clients will often come in and say, oh yeah, they'll give me the 10 out of 10s or the 8 or 9s out of 10s. But if you start to maybe break it down a bit for yourself and go, well, what are the 2 out of 10s or the 3 out of 10s? Maybe it's staying on the bus for 1 stop or 2 stops, or finding an alternative way to just push that comfort zone just a tiny bit while still being gentle with yourself. Um, and I suppose the idea being that you're kind of looking a little bit for a little bit of a challenge or a little bit of anxiety, but not enough to completely overwhelm yourself. Because it really is when we begin that sort of de kind of habituation process of the avoidance, that the things that were 3 out of 10, after doing them a couple of times, we're kind of going, oh, well, that's like a 1 out of 10. Maybe then I'll stay on for 3 stops or 4 stops and then 5 stops. And sort of just, again, that comfort zone idea, kind of just keep building that up whilst having patience for yourself, whilst talking to others. Yeah, just whilst reaching out, and yeah, you can get through this.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. There's something, I know I kind of say this a lot, but there's something really important, isn't there, about a kind of a kind or a compassionate approach. So we can often kind of want to rush to, well, you shouldn't feel anxious about this, so just do it. Or just kind of, or then that can lead to kind of finding it very difficult. So as you say, those small steps are really key, staying on the bus that bit for the couple more stops, and kind of doing it that way, and kind of being easy with yourself, that it is a process. And as we're talking about today, you will get there, but it's a bit of a kind of getting through it, and tackling that as you go. There's another question there which I think is quite interesting, about for those whom meditation does not help or makes things worse. What can you advise or explain why this occurs? And I guess I'm not sure what you might say there, Michael, but I suppose and maybe it touches in what we started talking about at the beginning, Darragh, that kind of in our, for many people, sort of experiences out of the environment maybe haven't always been that safe. So for the first thing maybe to say is that meditation doesn't work for everyone. So not everything works for everybody. So it's important to find the thing that kind of suits you. And a lot of times that focus, maybe even if it's on the breathing or if it's on the body, for some people, or at different times in your life, that maybe doesn't feel like a safe or reliable place to put that attention. So I suppose that thinking about our threat system, for some people that might activate threat rather than to kind of help, sort of, I guess, to find a kind of an observer position. So that can be kind of one of the reasons that can be tricky. So I don't know what you would say to that, Michael.
Yeah, and I think, yeah, as you said, Susan, yeah, meditation, it might either bring up a lot of fight or flight, it might be very difficult. Maybe we've always, needed to keep busy, or there's been maybe some feelings in the body that are, almost traumatic, that can come up. Well, it's a very brave thing, or very difficult thing, to sit alone with that. Um, but I suppose in that case, again, maybe body scan is easier than sitting with thoughts, or vice versa. But if it's really not working, maybe something like a nature-based presence of mind can be really nice. Thankfully, we're heading into the warmer months, and just even taking a bit of a mindful walk in nature, just to be with the nature, or have your feet on the ground, your bare feet on the ground if you're in a park or something like that, can be really nice and grounding and kind of safe, and it's not putting too much of the focus or the attention on your body. But then maybe for that person, then it is just practicing grounding techniques throughout the day. And if there are big feelings in the body that come up when you slow down, and that was actually a thing with COVID, a lot of people found that their busy routines were slowed down, and COVID, just stuff from years ago, everything started kind of coming out. They started remembering things or thinking about things, that maybe then, being able to talk to someone through that, or like, what is that? Is it just my mind is too busy? Or is it that there's stuff going on in the body? And another actual kind of thing I've found with meditation, it's very hard to just sit and think, but sometimes actually having maybe a little bit of a dance or something like that, a little dance around the house or the apartment, moving the body a little bit, or going out for a walk, and then sitting down to see if meditation works, can often just, it's settled the mind. You've released a lot of the energy, rather than just going straight from one thing to another to meditating. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, I guess there's got a bit of a trial and error for you as an individual in it, isn't there? And as you say, and Darragh, it makes me think of what you were saying there as well, about kind of the other part that had been really helpful for you, which was kind of exercise, and having that as part of kind of the routine.
Yeah, exactly. When I look back, maybe in my early 20s, meditation would not have worked for me either. So
Yeah.
I can relate to that person. I may have tried it maybe once or twice, but the thoughts were so powerful that I could not get them under control. So I had to go down a different route to get to that state. But now I find meditation really helps me because maybe I went through the counseling, the CBT, different aspects to get my mental health back on track. But definitely, yeah, I find exercise fantastic. Going for a quick jog, even a brisk walk. I know what that person's saying when the lockdown happens and people work from home. I'm slowly getting back into the office again. It does take time to kind of get to be around people again, and anxiety can come up. So just kind of go easy on myself, come in as much as I possibly can. I know if I go out drinking maybe over a weekend, that's going to have a knock-on effect on me throughout that week. So I've cut back a lot on drinking alcohol, eating kind of pretty healthy kind of food, less sugary food. That kind of helps me as well, kind of calm down anxiety. That's for me personally. I know that I'm kind of maybe a high energy kind of person that can maybe rattle me even a bit more. So yeah, definitely exercise, kind of eating a bit healthy, less alcohol, being around people you love. Yeah, those kind of things help me.
Yeah, yeah. Thanks, Darragh. That's really helpful actually, because it really makes me think as well, sort of when anxiety sort of takes hold, there's a bit of an urge to kind of stay with it, isn't there? Or that kind of, that I need to think about X or Y, or I need to kind of problem solve. But actually, as you say, those things that you're describing are really much more helpful and helps kind of break that cycle as well. And certainly if someone is getting caught up in a worry cycle, it's really, really helpful rather than trying to kind of come back, well, it won't happen because of X or Y, or this is why I shouldn't worry. It's actually about moving the body. And as you say, Darragh, maybe it's about going for a jog or doing something different. It's sort of kind of breaking that kind of, again, it's that attention focus, isn't it? And activating the body in a different way.
Exactly, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I'd say something just coming in for me there is as well, I suppose over time, changing that relationship to worry or thoughts, that we get so hooked on them and then they pull us in. But normally underneath a lot of worries, again, if we go back to the body, there's maybe a feeling there, there's a fear, there's something uncomfortable, there's a part of us that that is really caught up, maybe even be caught at that younger age where things have happened, or it's just caught, and there's a vulnerability there in the body that often we'll try and think our way out of it and go, oh, I get this bad feeling, there must be something wrong, or it must be this, and we think all, you know 7 ways to Sunday about what it could be or what's wrong. But actually eventually if we're able, yeah, getting back to that place of kind of compassion for, okay, part of me is really unsettled, is really worried, the trigger is whatever it is, but in me, can I send that place a little bit of compassion, or what it needs, whether that's get up and move, or journal, or talk to a friend, just kind of that inner kind of family we have going on of different parts of ourselves, and yeah, looking after ourselves rather than kind of condemning ourselves then, which is and I shouldn't be like this, and actually, okay, a feeling may just want to be felt for 5 minutes, to be recognized and go, oh yeah, I am feeling more deeply about this than I realized.
Mm.
That can often really help to kind of diffuse the thoughts, as you said, Susan, rather than trying to logic our way out of all of them.
Mm.
Because
Mm.
that can sometimes just be, you get lost in a maze then.
Yeah.
But what's going on underneath, and finding the things that work for you as an individual, what you like, uh,
Mm.
is really important.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And there's a question here that kind of resonates a bit with what you're saying there about this idea of kind of retrospectively looking back at situations and maybe torturing yourself with what you've done. And you've spoken a little bit about to that, haven't you, about kind of compassion. And I suppose it maybe advice for that. I guess my question is kind of not necessarily for that specifically, but again, it's kind of what's the purpose of this thinking? Where am I trying to get to? As you say, am I trying to logic my way out of it? Am I trying to punish myself for what's happened? Am I trying to learn from it so it doesn't happen again? And I guess it kind of brings back to that idea of how do you know when thinking has become problematic, whether it's now become ruminative or whether it's become worry based. And I think your body generally tells you that. if you've moved from a place of kind of looking for answers and, you know, problem solving into kind of more anxiety thinking. So definitely kind of bringing in self-compassion around the aftermath. Oftentimes we do lots of strange things when we might feel anxious that no one notices, you know, as you said, Michael, and maybe people not even picking up when you're doing the breathing exercise. We don't tend to really notice things about people, but our minds might tell us something quite different has happened. So kind of diffusing those sort of thoughts a little bit. And there's a question here, maybe I'll read it out. Actually, it's interesting because it might be relevant to a lot of people. So I watch the news and current affairs a lot, and with all that's happening in the world right now, I find I get very worried about the present and the future. Worry can take over, and during discussions with people, then I find myself getting very angry, maybe too passionate over it. Is this me being anxious? Should I just turn off from watching and reading these articles? Or is this just me caring about what's happening in the world? I think that's really relevant maybe for the kind of world that we're in. I don't know if either of you have any kind of views on that. Michael, do you wanna kick
Sure.
off there?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think, yeah, of course, it can be good to be up to date. And of course, our heart goes out to everybody in the world who's, been impacted by war or disasters or climate change. Um, though the piece might be, what would it cost you, to limit that searching, a lot of kind of so easy to get lost in a loop or kind of in scrolling, or 24-hour news has been a thing, but especially on phones, to get really bogged down in the nitty-gritty. And that's kind of, they say, you are what you eat, or you need to watch your diet. Well, sort of a social media diet or media diet is also maybe a part of that too. So while, yeah, the courage and the passion to speak out about social issues and issues in the world is really valid and needed, there's also that piece of, where's the self-care in that, of like how many hours a day would be good for someone, or for one to spend looking into all these things. Or, is it possible to take maybe strategic days off, like take a Sunday off? Right, today now I'm not going to look at the news. I'm going to give myself a little break from everything, because that constant feed of information and terrible images or negativity, it definitely, it will have an impact on our outlook on the world and how we're thinking and our fears. But maybe if you feel you can do something about go to a protest, or give a little money for climate change, or whatever it is, to do your little part. But then remember, you need to be happy too, and to live, and that'll actually maybe make you a more effective advocate, or more effective at what you're doing. But I hear you, it's a really tricky balance. It's a really unprecedented time.
Mm.
So again, just, yeah, that gentleness with yourself, but asking what's best for me with how much I'm consuming.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And there's a good few questions coming in about, I suppose, on one level, sort of CBT for teenagers and children, and certainly cognitive behavioral therapy is beneficial. So it's a recommended intervention, along with various other kind of interventions for anxiety and depression. So do look it up if you're interested in that for kind of younger adults. So it's different. Maybe it might be accessible in a different way, but that's, yeah. So that can be really helpful. And I guess it ties on to the second part of those questions about kind of supporting someone who might be going through an anxiety episode. Now, Darragh, I don't know if you might be able to say a little bit to that about kind of what might be helpful from if someone was thinking, well, how do I support this person? What's sort of useful there, do you think?
Just listen. Just be as open as you possibly can. Try not to interrupt. Just be an open book for them. Again, like I said before, my life changed when I was 24, when my mum pretty much listened to me and just gave me the biggest hug and brought me to the doctor straight away. Because God knows where my life would have gone if I didn't open up to that to my mum. So yeah, just be open, be there for that person. Treat them with compassion and respect, and just listen as much as you possibly can, and offer as much support as you possibly can to that person, because yeah, it takes a lot. People may think it's weakness, but it's so brave. When I look back at my 24-year-old self, in my head I thought, oh, this is a weakness. I'm pathetic. What's wrong with me? Why can't I just be like a normal 24-year-old guy? But when I look back, I was so brave in even opening up to my mother to explain what was going on. So just be kind to yourself and know that what you're doing is going to have a massive change in your life in the future for the better.
Yeah, thanks, Darragh. Thank you. That's beautifully said. Yeah. And I guess there's a really nice comment in here. I might actually read it out actually because it's helpful. Would it stand up in court is one question I ask myself to de-escalate worry. So that's maybe a different strategy that kind of people can help in challenging some of those more negative thoughts. As an older woman, I'd like to reassure young people there's nothing wrong with them, and age does bring ease, which is a nice point. And thank you for all the great tips. Thanks especially to Darragh. It's a very powerful stuff, and I really echo that. Yeah, thank you, Darragh. And it's really helpful to kind of think about what is helpful, and what it's like to kind of go through it. It's, as you were saying, it feels like when you have anxiety or depression or any kind of something that kind of really can impact your life, that everyone else is sort of managing it better, and that you might be the only
Yeah,
person who has this. But
exactly. Yeah,
actually,
sorry, Susan, sorry, apologies.
no, go ahead, go ahead.
No, so exactly when I was young and looking at my peers and everyone else, they're loving life, and everything was going great for them, and then internally I felt, oh, everything's going wrong for me, and I was so hard on myself. But yeah, I just, like you said, take a step back and just be as open as you possibly can, and there's so much support out there for people.
Yeah, absolutely. And Michael, I don't know if you wanted to add in anything into those last two points or not, or.
Sorry, I was actually just kind of in awe of Darragh there.
Yeah.
Of what he just said, So yeah, but what was that last question again? So sorry.
I guess just thinking about the kind of theme of isolation and anxiety, and sort
Yeah.
of the importance of kind of connecting out for help.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And the amount of people, across who might say, oh God, there's a name for some of these kind of thoughts that I'm having. There's, they say, oh, you're going to think I'm mad, or you're going to think I'm this. And I'm like, no, these are common. Look back, I've had them myself, it's so common. And so many of us, don't know the exact stat, but it's a huge number. Probably like more than 50% of us or more will have a mental health challenge at a time in our life, or life will knock us down a little bit, and just more negativity might start coming in. We're less optimistic for the future, we're more fearful. So yeah, there is a lot of help out there for folks, even webinars like this, or services with Aware, free phone numbers,
Yeah.
Counseling and psychotherapy. There's alternative therapies, or just even getting more out in nature.
Sure.
Support groups. It is out there, and yeah, just don't ever be ashamed to just talk to someone. And I would also say, sometimes the earlier, in some ways, the better. Do you, if there's a couple of leaks in your roof, and you're kind of going, there's something going on here, do you go, oh, do we wait until the roof has kind of has caved in? Or, like I say, it's always good, even as a preventative, just to put a few steps into maybe a few sessions, or talking with someone about your mental health, or self-help books, things like that.
Yeah.
There's a lot of great books out there. So
yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. So then, and certainly kind of our website, and kind of there's I think it's come up in some of the questions, maybe, something kind of around OCD as well. There's OCD UK for anyone who might be listening who's wondering more about that. It's a really great resource, and No Panic is a good one for panic attacks. And I guess just one last point to kind of tie into what you were saying there, Michael. You might agree with this, I'm not sure, but I suppose if you're thinking some of these thoughts I have are quite mad or really unusual, I can guarantee they're probably quite shared. Something I often use with people is a study that was done about the kind of thoughts that people kind of endorsed having. Really kind of maybe unusual thoughts are actually really common across the general population, like shouting something out in public, or kind of pushing someone off a train platform, or these are just thoughts that might happen. So it's, I guess, this idea that we can all have a whole range of unusual thoughts. It's not abnormal. I guess what we're saying today, it's our relationship with how we think and our relationship with what's happening in our body, and maybe some of then the strategies we get caught up in can kind of keep anxiety going, which is a bit of a kind of an overview of that CBT model. But I'm aware we're kind of gotten to time, so maybe Michael, might start with you just very briefly, if you in 1 or 2 words, what you might say, kind of what's the most important thing maybe for people to take away from them in the webinar today.
Be kind to yourself.
Great. Thanks very much. And Darragh, a word or 2, what's the most important thing for you?
I suppose the biggest message I want to give is just like, you are not alone. And if you can, speak to someone, anyone, because there's so many people going through similar scenarios that you are. And it just takes one person to help change some part of your life. And yeah, be kind to yourself.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Darragh. Thanks for sharing your experience. It's been really, really valuable. And thank you too, Michael. It's been really, really good discussion. Hopefully it's been of benefit to people and of interest, and certainly do let us know in the feedback after kind of how you found it. So thank you both so much. It's a pleasure speaking to you both today.
Thanks,
and you're very welcome. And so moving on to the webinar for next month, if you can join us, we'll be talking about perinatal mental health with Richard Duffy, Maria Kane and Orla Conlon. So that'll be on the 8th of May. So hopefully see many of you again there. Thanks for joining us today. Thanks again, Michael and Darragh, and see you all next month.
Thanks, Susan. Take care.
Thanks,
everybody.
Bye-bye.